Welcome back to Giant Freakin' Robot. Spaceships are one of the best things about science fiction. When they're done right, they become cultural icons. And it's not about whether or not your ship is ugly. Sometimes ugly is exactly what you want. Ships like Serenity and the Millennium Falcon are awkward and ungainly looking on purpose. Giving them that aesthetic makes them the lovable underdog you want to root for. Sometimes, though, ugly and stupid is just ugly and stupid. When they're designed that badly, it's usually because the ship in question is part of a sci-fi project that's as bad as it is. And yet the worst sci-fi starship ever created is, somehow, not part of the worst piece of science fiction ever made. It's on a kind of good new science fiction series called The Ark. The Ark has 2 seasons of television under its belt. Produced by SyFy and streaming on the Peacock app, The Ark has been a modest success. And with the end of shows like The Expanse, Picard, Discovery, and Lower Decks, it's one of the only outer space sci-fi shows still being produced. Before we take a look at the hideous exterior of this flying nightmare that is the show's main setting, we need to explain why it's there. So let's quickly run through what the Ark is about and how its characters ended up on it. The show is set in a future where the Earth is rapidly becoming uninhabitable. The whys and hows of this aren't all that important and aren't fully explored by the show. What matters is that humans need a new home, and so the Ark program was conceived to build ships that would take us somewhere else. The series begins aboard Ark One, flying through space mid-mission. The crew is in some sort of stasis for the long voyage, there's a disaster, and most of the command crew is killed. The survivors wake up, and the only people left are junior officers and civilians. The show follows their journey to make it to their destination, with the odds stacked against them. You've seen a lot of Ark One's interiors while I've been talking, and you're probably thinking, not so bad. It's generic, white, future stuff. Sure, the bridge looks like a bunch of computers sitting on foldable card tables, but it's easy to overlook. Shot from the right angles, it's not so noticeable. Now take a look at Ark One's exterior. Warning: those of you with strong gag reflexes may want to look away. Your first reaction is probably that yes, it's ugly, but they were likely going for some sort of realistic, space physics thing, and sometimes those ships are meant to be ugly. Nope, that's not what's going on. You're probably thinking those spinning rings on it are there to create gravity with centrifugal force. Nope, that's where the stasis pods were kept, and once everyone wakes up, they never go in that section of the ship again. Instead, they spend all their time in the parts of the ship without any gravity-creating spin, and yet there seems to be plenty of gravity in them. So why the spinning rings then? No idea, they're just there and no one on the ship ever mentions them. That's the case with most of Ark One. Nothing about it serves any purpose. It's a bunch of non-specific pieces jammed together for no apparent reason. And the people inside the ship don't seem to know any of it, outside of this part at the front, and this one biodome is there. The biodome, by the way, also makes no sense. When running out of food, they decide to grow crops in there, because it's a big open space.
I can grow crops in this stuff.
But why there was a big, empty, exposed, dome-shaped area on top of the ship is fairly inexplicable. It wasn't originally designed for plant growing, since it's not transparent to allow light through. Whoever designed the ship just decided it needed a big, empty dome stuck on it, in a way that it was fully exposed and easily damaged. It's also not clear why the ship has stasis pods, or why the entire crew was sleeping in them. Once the accident wakes them up, it feels as though they're able to activate the ship's hyperspace drive and get most anywhere in a few days or hours. In fact, along their journey they encounter other, identically ugly and stupid Arks, and all have their crews fully active and awake. They also encounter another type of ship, which is ugly in a totally different way. This one looks like a flying brick with weapons pods attached to it. At least it doesn't have pointless, spinning rings. I guess that's an upgrade. This ship was created for Season 2 of the show, when they knew they weren't doing the zero-G thing. But by Season 2, they also should have known the ships they were designing were horrible and ugly, and more drastically changed direction rather than keeping that aesthetic and painting it on a spacefaring cinder block. So Ark One is stupid, it's ugly, and it makes no sense. You'd think the show would want to hide it. Maybe they had a budget problem and couldn't help it. They did build the bridge out of folding tables after all. Nope. They think this is a good ship. We know that because they created an opening credits sequence solely devoted to showing off the show's horrible ship. And then, somehow, they managed to find music that sounds as terrible as Ark One looks. It's really a huge problem for the show, and one that at this point is impossible to solve, since nearly every moment of every story takes place aboard Ark One. And that's a shame because, like I said at the outset, aside from how stupid the ship is, the Ark is actually not bad. Give it a couple more seasons to dial things in, and I could even see the show becoming great. But it's nearly impossible to convince anyone to watch it if the first thing they see when they turn it on looks like this. At least the shuttles aren't terrible. I want to hit pause here on my complaining to give the team working on the Ark some praise. Because while I do think this is the worst ship design in the history of science fiction, bad music aside, the way they're using it is fantastic. Ark One is always well lit, so it's easy to see. No annoying shadows to hide bad CGI, and they don't skimp on the space shots. The Ark does a great job of showing what's going on both inside and outside the ship. And the show is even better at using exterior establishing shots to show which parts of the ship the action is happening in. The show's direction is top-notch, and their special effects team is doing the best work they could possibly do in a situation where they're saddled with such a terrible design. It's the design that's the problem, not the show's execution. Which in a way, makes this problem even more frustrating. Because if the ship was good, the way they're using it could have resulted in some of the best sci-fi space scenes ever shown on television. But the ship isn't good, and it wasn't good from the moment someone first drew it out on a piece of paper. If there's anything good about Ark One's design, I guess it's that it is, indeed, unforgettable. Usually bad starship designs are bad because they're boring or generic. Ark One isn't that, though it's hard to believe they put much thought into it. So what really went wrong here? The ship was designed by a man named Randall Groves, and he gave some interviews, seemingly unaware he'd created an embarrassment. Groves claims the design was the result of an attempt at scientific accuracy, apparently unaware that nothing about this ship is accurate. Reading between the lines, it sounds like the original plan for the show was to have parts of the ship where the crew is weightless, but when it came time to shoot they didn't have the budget to actually do that, so they nixed it and went with artificial gravity all over the ship. Unfortunately, they also didn't have the budget to update the ship to fit their new, more budget-friendly scripts. That explains why Ark One makes no sense, but it doesn't explain why it's ugly. Groves says they went deep, looking at films like Star Wars, Silent Running and The Black Hole, for a vibe check on what this future world might look like. I don't see any Star Wars in it, but Silent Running makes sense as a reference. That ship is also a contender for ugliest sci-fi monstrosity. He said they also aim to mix the clean aesthetic of SpaceX's ships and gear, along with marine design cues. So it's Elon Musk's fault. How the Ark made it all the way to television with a hero ship this dumb and ugly will likely always be something of a mystery. Do your best to ignore it and watch the show anyway. Because really, the Ark is sort of good. In an era with extremely limited new space sci-fi options on television, it's worth supporting. But my god, is that ship ugly. Join our Ark One support group in the comments on this video. And if you subscribe, we promise to cheer things up in our next video. Until next time, this has been Giant Freakin' Robot.